long before the clang of Dwemer machines echoed through the stone halls of forgotten mountains, before Red Mountain fumed with secrets and betrayal, there was silence. A silence not empty, but waiting. Tamriel, in its infancy, was a continent of whispered creation myths, of Aedra and Daedra staking their claims, of time stretching like an uncut thread across the horizon. The land was not yet worn by centuries, not yet carved by ambition or arrogance. The air shimmered with the raw breath of unshaped magic, and beneath its surface, the bones of Nirn slumbered, untouched by tonal hammers or steam-powered limbs. It was during this age of early song and shadow that the Dwemer, the deep elves, began to shape their legend. Though their cities now lie buried beneath ash, ice, and sand, their story did not begin in fire or ruin. It began in quietude, in questions. Where others built shrines, the Dwemer built equations. Where others offered sacrifice, they offered calculation. They rejected the worship of gods, not out of irreverence, but in pursuit of a greater truth, one not bound by myth, but by mechanism. They sought to peel back the skin of the world and glimpse the gears beneath, convinced that even divinity could be reverse-engineered. To outsiders, they appeared cold, aloof, perhaps arrogant. But within their subterranean halls, illuminated by ever-burning lamps and the soft hum of tonal resonators, a civilization pulsed with intellectual fire. Their scholars, known as tonal architects, did not simply study the world. They bent it to symphonies only they could hear. In the deep places, far from the songs of men and myrrh, they built wonders that defied comprehension, machines that lived, libraries that whispered, guardians powered by trapped souls. Their understanding of the arcane was not fueled by worship, but by a kind of mathematical reverence, a belief that the universe was a song, and they merely needed to learn the notes. But even the most calculated melody can waver. The first discordant note had not yet been struck, but its echo was coming. In the heart of Resdain, beneath layers of stone and myth, the stage was being set. The Heart of Lorkhan slept beneath Red Mountain, and with it, a temptation too great for even the most disciplined minds to ignore. This is the story of the Dwemer, of Kagrenac, of the Tribunal, and of the silence that followed. In the glowing forges beneath the stone ribs of Enchardak, a mind unlike any other began to shift the fate of an entire race. Kagrenac, high engineer of the Dwemer and tonal architect without peer, gazed upon the world not with awe, but with challenge. Where others saw gods and fate, he saw systems, patterns of resonance, harmonic structures, frequencies that whispered of possibility. To Kagrenac, divinity was not bestowed, it was calculated. His great project, shrouded in secrecy even from fellow Dwemer lords, was known only by hushed names: the Numidium, the Anumidium, the Divine Machine. But its core was no secret to the stone halls of the Deep Folk. It revolved around the Heart of Lorkhan, that strange divine remnant buried beneath Red Mountain, a relic of the gods' betrayal and the source of untapped mythic resonance. Kagrenac believed it could be studied, harnessed, even rewritten. He crafted tools, Sunder, Keening, and Wraithguard, instruments not of destruction, but of tuning, not to smash the heart, but to speak to it. Like a master musician drawing divine music from an ancient string, he sought to unify the Dwemer, not through politics or conquest, but by transforming them into a single, eternal entity beyond death and rebirth. Not worshipped gods, but self-made ones. But such ambition requires sacrifice. Even among the Dwemer, whose logic overrode superstition, Kagrenac's vision sparked unease. A project to rewrite mortality itself, to deconstruct the soul and rebuild it in tonal architecture. Some whispered warnings, others turned away. Yet Kagrenac pressed forward. Sleepless years spent in halls filled with steam and whispering brass. Theoretical models inscribed not on paper, but etched into the stone bones of cities. Resonance chambers hummed like choirs. The Numidium's frame took shape, vast, unknowable, half machine, half myth. And beneath it all pulsed the heart. What Kagrenac sought was more than control. He sought to answer a question older than the gods. If creation is a song, can one learn to change its melody? And if so, what happens when you try? Far to the east of Kagrenac's resonating halls, the land of Resdain, later known as Morrowind, rumbled with its own disquiet. On the surface, peace endured, but beneath, the tectonic plates of ideology, race, and ambition had begun to grind. The Dwemer, cold and rational, mastercrafters of the tonal and mechanical, held their cities like fortresses of thought. Above ground, the Chimer flourished, poetic, mystical, fiercely tied to ancestor worship and their living gods. These two cultures, though once allied, had never truly shared a language of belief. And now, that silence had grown dangerous. At the heart of this fragile unity stood Nerevar, Hortator of the Chimer. A warrior and a diplomat, he balanced the will of his people with a wary eye on Dwemer ambition. Beside him stood the Tribunal, Almalexia, wise and resolute, Sotha Sil, cryptic and curious, and Vivek, ever mercurial, poet and killer both. Together, they had forged peace between the Chimer and the Dwemer, built on fragile respect and hard-won victories. But the alliance began to fray as rumors of Kagrenac's work spread beyond the mountains. Whispers of the heart, of a god machine, of tools that could rewrite souls. To the Chimer, steeped in Daedric faith, such things reeked of blasphemy. The gods Azura, Mephala, and Boethia warned their followers in visions. The Tribunal, particularly Vivek and Almalexia, debated. Was this hubris or evolution? Was Kagrenac's dream a threat, or merely a different path toward divinity? But for Nerevar, it was simpler. Something dangerous was awakening beneath Red Mountain, and trust, once broken, could never be fully reforged. Delegations were sent, meetings held in stone chambers lit by ghost fire. Kagrenac refused transparency. The Dwemer High Council denied the heart was even real, but the truth could not be hidden. Sotha Sil, ever curious, spoke with Dwemer engineers and returned with eyes haunted and silent. The rift had formed. What began as quiet unease soon became a thundercloud on the horizon. And so, the fate of two peoples stood on a knife's edge. In the depths of the world, a god's heart pulsed. Above, leaders struggled with loyalty, prophecy, and pride. Soon, it would break. The silence shattered like glass. What began as whispers became declarations. The fragile pact between Chimer and Dwemer ruptured under the weight of ancient grudges and newfound dread. War, once unthinkable, now marched upon the red-tinged soil of Resdain. It was not a sudden explosion, but a slow ignition. Disputes over borders became skirmishes. Accusations turned into ultimatums. And at the heart of it all lay a single, pulsing truth. The Dwemer would not abandon the Heart of Lorkhan. Nerevar, bound by loyalty to his people and tormented by the betrayal of his former allies, took up the mantle of war. He moved not with vengeance, but with sorrow, each battle a wound on the soul of a homeland he had tried to preserve. The Dwemer, for their part, showed no remorse. They fought with the cold precision of machines, their constructs unleashed like gods of bronze. Towering centurions, whirring spiders, and legions of animunculi thundered through valleys and mountain passes. They were not defending territory, they were defending an idea. Beside Nerevar, the tribunal fought with valor and purpose. Almalexia led armies with radiant fury, her blade as sharp as her resolve. Sotha Sil vanished for days, only to reappear at key moments with arcane constructs of his own, crafted in secret. Vivek, half poet, half divine, moved like a phantom across battlefields, shaping outcomes with both sword and verse. The conflict was not one war, but many. Sieges in the shadow of Red Mountain, naval clashes along the coasts of Vardenfell, and assassinations whispered through the dunes of the Molag Amur. Cities fell. Strongholds changed hands. Even the Daedra grew restless, called upon by desperate Chimer generals and answered with cryptic bargains and cursed victories. As the years stretched, the cost became incalculable. Families were scattered, bloodlines broken. What had once been a war for honor became a storm of survival. And always, the heart beat below. Each side believed they were fighting to save their people, yet each step forward was a step closer to annihilation. The dream of unity had become a nightmare carved in ash and brass. And the mountain waited. Red Mountain loomed like a slumbering god, its flanks veiled in steam and soot, its roots entwined with the secrets of the Dwemer. Here, at the end of all things, the final act of the War of the First Council would be written, not in diplomacy or parchment, but in fire and stone. The Chimer armies encircled the mountain, a siege unlike any seen before. War tents filled the ashlands, where prayers mingled with the scent of burnt oil. Ballistas and siege towers were dragged into place, useless against the Dwemer's hidden doors, but symbols of intent. And in the center of it all, Nerevar stood, worn from years of bloodshed, yet resolute. The Dwemer, meanwhile, had vanished into their metal sanctuaries. Kagrenac and his engineers worked with feverish intensity deep beneath the crust. Rumors swirled among the Chimer, of impossible machines, of divine energies building to a crescendo, of Kagrenac striking the heart with tools crafted from myth. And then, silence. It was not the silence of peace, but the poised breath before the scream. Nerevar led his final push into the mountain's bowels, accompanied by his closest allies. Almalexia, Sotha Sil, Vivek, each carrying the weight of their people, their gods, and their own ambitions. They breached the Dwemer stronghold, stepping into halls lit by ghostly blue fire, where machines hummed in eerie harmony and the air vibrated with unknown purpose. The deeper they went, the more the laws of reality seemed to fray. Light bent strangely, time felt slower, and always the rhythmic pulse of the heart echoed through stone and soul. At the threshold of the heart chamber, they found Dagoth Ur, once a loyal guardian, now transformed. He stood alone before the heart, its glow reflecting in his eyes like a mirror of madness. Kagrenac was nowhere to be seen, his tools left behind, Sunder, Keening, and Wraithguard. A confrontation ensued. Words failed. Steel spoke. Nerevar and Dagoth clashed, titans bound by fate. Sparks filled the chamber. Spells cracked against brass and bone. At last, Nerevar struck true. Dagoth Ur fled into the shadows, wounded but not destroyed. Then came the silence again. The heart pulsed. The tools lay untouched. And Nerevar, weary and wounded, turned to his tribunal and asked, "What now?" In the moments after battle, when swords are sheathed and blood cools on stone, history begins to choose its narrators. Nerevar emerged from the heart chamber, gravely wounded, but victorious, for now. The heart still beat in its molten cradle, and the tools of Kagrenac, untouched by the tribunal's hands, waited. What happened next is clouded by sacred lies and whispered truths, a mist of myth that would settle thick over the centuries. By some accounts, Nerevar convened with his companions, Almalexia, Vivec, and Sothasil, beneath Red Mountain, weighing the fate of the tools and the divine power they promised. He, ever the war-weary idealist, was said to have urged restraint. "Lock them away," he may have pleaded. "Let no mortal wield what belongs to the gods." But restraint has no root in ambition. Nerevar's death came swiftly. Some say his wounds finally took him. Others whisper of poison, of betrayal, cloaked in mourning robes. The tribunal wept, of course. They built him tombs and sang him dirges, but their hearts were already turning toward the heart. What they did next would forever change the Chimer and Tamriel itself. One by one, they entered the heart chamber. One by one, they took up Kagrenac's tools. They struck the heart, not in rage or desperation, but in ritual. And with each strike, divinity seeped into their veins. Almalexia, already radiant with command, became more than mortal, her grace touched by flame and prophecy. Sothasil, the clockwork philosopher, bound his essence to mechanisms beyond comprehension. He became a god, not of flesh, but of design. And Vivec, half man, half myth, wrapped in contradiction and beauty. His godhood was poetry, etched into time itself. The Chimer beheld their new deities with awe and fear. When the tribunal spoke, the earth trembled. When they walked, the ash shifted to mark their steps. The heart had not only elevated them, it had transformed them, and it cursed their people. Azura, ever watchful, descended upon the new gods. "You were warned," she intoned, her voice echoing through dreams and stone. "You broke your oath to Nerevar. You have stolen what was not yours." Then she cast her curse. The golden-skinned Chimer, once proud and luminous, became the ashen Dunmer, their eyes forever red with divine fire, their skin marked by betrayal. The tribunal called it a blessing, the Ashlanders called it justice, and the heart continued to beat. With the heart secured and the Dwemer gone, the tribunal rose, not merely as leaders, but as living gods. The lands of Morrowind shifted beneath their feet, molded by divine will and silent decree. Temples sprouted where ash once fell, and the people, caught between awe and grief, learned new ways to kneel. The tribunal temple was born, an institution of piety and control. Its doctrines flowed from the mouths of the three: Vivec the poet warrior, Almalexia, the Mother of Mercy, and Sotha Sil, the Clockwork Sage. Their words became law, their images adorned every shrine, and their silence, when it came, was as sacred as prophecy. To the public, they were saviors. They had defeated the Dwemer, repelled the threat of blasphemous ambition, and returned with the gift of protection. In the time of confusion and fear, they offered certainty. But beneath the surface, questions lingered about Nerevar's death, about the nature of the tools, about the bargain struck with divinity. Those who questioned too loudly disappeared. The dissident priests, the Ashlanders, and the forgotten seers whispered their doubts beneath the stars, far from the temple's ears. Sotha Sil withdrew, retreating to his hidden city of gears and lights, where time ticked in loops and thought moved like machinery. He would not be seen again for centuries, save in vision or omen. Almalexia ruled from Mournhold, veiled in ritual and guarded by flame. Her wisdom was unquestioned, her punishment swift. Vivek lingered between extremes, warrior and mystic, truth and paradox. He wrote of his godhood in sermons dense with mystery, shaping his narrative as both scripture and confession. He walked among the people, yet always at a slant, as if never fully present in one world or another. And so, the Tribunal ruled for generations, their divinity unchallenged, their grip on Morrowind absolute. But the Heart of Lorkhan still pulsed beneath Red Mountain, tethered to something that had not yet died. In the quiet, deep beneath ash and stone, another presence stirred, wounded, waiting, remembering. Dagoth Ur had not perished. He had fled into shadow, his essence feeding upon the heart like a forgotten son returned to the cradle. Slowly, painfully, he began to dream again, dreams of vengeance, of unity, of a new godhood forged in fire and betrayal. The Tribunal reigned above, but something else had begun to awaken below. Beneath Red Mountain, silence was not empty. It breathed. It remembered. In the hollows where Kagrenac's tools had once sung to the heart, a fractured soul endured. Dagoth Ur. Once a loyal guardian, a brother in arms to Nerevar. Now something else entirely. Time had unraveled him. Power had reknit his form. What emerged from the centuries was no longer the Dwemer he had been, but a god in waiting, shaped by madness, grief, and the pulsing lullaby of the heart. He had been left behind, forgotten by friend and foe alike. But he had not forgotten. The heart, still thrumming with divine rhythm, reached out to him. It called to his broken mind, whispering secrets in the voice of old gods and lost empires. Dagoth Ur listened. He learned. And he changed. Not all at once. First, he lingered in shadow, gathering the strength to shape his will into flesh. He extended his thoughts into the ash, into the bones of the mountain. Through forgotten tunnels and ancient halls, he spread his influence like rot beneath polished stone. Then came the dreams, dark, insistent dreams that slipped into the minds of the sleeping. Promises of unity, of purpose, of freedom from false gods. The sixth house, long dead, stirred once more in hushed murmurs and flickering candlelight. The dreamers awoke. They walked with vacant eyes and whispered songs of the new dawn. Ash creatures, twisted by divine exposure, crept through ruins and abandoned halls. They were the first children of Dagoth Ur, born not of womb, but of will. He gave them no names, only purpose: to reclaim, to avenge, to purge the corruption that had stolen godhood from its rightful heir. In secret, Dagoth Ur constructed his temple within the ruins of Red Mountain. There, among rusted machines and glowing stone, he plotted the end of the Tribunal. He would rise, not merely as a god, but as the true Nerevarine reborn. The Chimer would be restored, the heart would be unbound, the false gods would fall before him. Above, the Tribunal sensed a disturbance, faint at first, a shiver in their divine tether, a presence they thought vanquished. They dismissed it as echoes, residual energy from ancient battles. But Dagoth Ur was no echo. He was the mountain now, its breath, its blood, its mind. And he was waking up. The Tribunal, once radiant with divine vigor, began to dim. Their power, drawn from the heart, had always required proximity, a secret they never shared. Each pilgrimage to Red Mountain kept their godhood renewed. Each ritual fed their borrowed divinity. But now, the mountains stirred against them. Dagoth Ur, entrenched within the heart chamber, had claimed the source. What once flowed freely to the Tribunal now trickled, strained through his will. Like a jealous flame, he fed upon the same divine spark, denying his former allies the fire they needed. Vivek felt it first. His sermons grew quieter, more cryptic. The energy that once flowed from his every word dulled. His face, once brilliant, now flickered like a lantern in wind. Almalexia, proud and unyielding, refused to believe. She interpreted the fading power as a test, a divine trial. Her rituals grew harsher, her rule more rigid. The faithful obeyed, still convinced of her divinity, but whispers bloomed in temple shadows. Sothasil remained silent. In his brass-walled city, far removed from temple or throne, he studied the waning current, like a scholar watches a dying star. He knew the truth. Their time was ending. Outside, Morrowind shifted. The sixth house returned, first in symbols and dreams, then in ash statues and wandering cultists. At first, the Tribunal denied it, dismissed the movement as superstition, hysteria, a revival of dead heresy. But then the ash storms began. Red Mountain, once a sleeping relic, began to breathe. Sulphurous winds howled through the valleys. Crops failed. Villages fell silent. The skies over Vardenfell grew dark, not with clouds, but with dust and omen. Dreamers, once pious citizens, wandered the roads murmuring strange names, chanting hymns not found in temple liturgy. Some vanished into caves. Others perished, their minds too fractured to hold what Dagoth Ur had shown them. Pilgrimages to the heart became perilous. The Tribunal, once proud travelers to the sacred center, now hesitated. Dagoth Ur's minions guarded the paths. The old halls of Kagrenac rang again with life, not from the Dwemer, but from something far stranger. The gods of Morrowind began to fracture. Almalexia turned inward, her fear cloaked in fire. Vivek vanished for long spans, walking the borders of thought and prophecy, his path uncertain. Sothasil sealed his city, and still Dagoth Ur grew stronger, fed by faith twisted and dreams made flesh. In the ash and silence, the balance shifted. Morrowind stood on the edge of forgetting what its gods had once been. In the shadow of Red Mountain, where ash fell like snow and silence pressed heavy upon stone, a whisper endured. Not all had forgotten Nerevar. Amid the temples and tombs, among the faithful and the frightened, a quiet movement stirred. The dissident priests, scholars, heretics, visionaries. They did not kneel blindly to the tribunal. They questioned. They remembered. And most dangerously, they believed that Nerevar would return. The teachings of the temple had long suppressed uncomfortable truths. The official story told of a noble warrior king who died a hero's death, leaving his trusted companions to carry forward his legacy. But the old words said otherwise. The Ashlanders, the nomadic scorned cousins of the Dwemer, never forgot. In their camps beneath the stars, they spoke of betrayal, of oaths broken before the gods. They claimed that Nerevar had not simply died. He had been deceived. The tribunal had taken the tools and the heart for themselves, breaking their vow and earning Azura's wrath. Azura, who watched from her twilight realm, did not forget either. She promised that Nerevar would return, born anew, marked by prophecy, destined to reclaim what had been lost and restore balance. The Nerevarine. This prophecy, forbidden in cities and hunted in temples, endured in the words of the dissident priests and the memories of the Ashlanders. Scrolls were hidden, truths encoded in riddles, dreams passed between sleepers like lanterns down a river. One such lantern found its way to the hands of a prisoner, a stranger with no past, marked by fate and prophecy. They would arrive in Morrowind under the shadow of a divine star. They would walk the path of the 7 trials. They would unite the houses, fulfill the prophecies, and face the forgotten god beneath the mountain. But first, they would need to learn, to listen, to survive. In the city of Vivek, where the false god ruled from a palace that floated above water, the stranger would cross paths with the dissident priests. And through whispers and riddles, scrolls and secrets, they would begin to uncover the shape of their own destiny. Not a warrior born, nor a hero by blood, but something older, an echo of a name spoken in battle long ago. Nerevar. And through this stranger, history would begin to move again. The path of the Nerevarine was not lit by triumph, but by trial, ash, and doubt. Emerging from prison with no name and no past, the chosen did not stride like a hero. They wandered, quiet, observant, uncertain. Morrowind was not a land eager to receive them. It bristled with ancient tensions, house rivalries, temple politics, and the quiet dread of Dagoth Ur's return. Yet destiny persisted. Each step was a whisper through time. First among the blades, imperial agents who recognized the stirrings of prophecy. Then among the Ashlanders, who studied omens and dreams with cautious hope. The Nerevarine's path wove through camps and strongholds, across sacred sites and forgotten ruins. The 7 trials, cryptic and sacred, became signposts in ash and memory. They would master the trials of birth and fate, proving themselves a stranger reborn under a sign of prophecy. They would unite the nomadic tribes, skeptical and splintered, into a single voice once more. They would challenge the great houses, walking the knife's edge of politics and war, earning respect not through power, but through action and truth. Then came the deeper trials, those unseen, buried in the bones of the land. The cavern of the incarnate, hidden deep within the wastes, opened only to one marked by Azura herself. There, Among the long-dead failed incarnates, those who bore the prophecy but fell short, the Nerevarine found not just validation, but sorrow. So many had tried. So many had carried the weight of fate until it crushed them. Their voices lingered, offering wisdom, warning, and a hope passed like a torch between lives. The Nerevarine listened. With each step, the veil of the present thinned, revealing echoes of a past yet unresolved. Dreams grew sharper. Dagoth Ur whispered, not as an enemy, but as a voice from deep time, promising peace, rebirth, unity, if only the heart would be allowed to beat freely. Yet the Nerevarine saw the truth behind the veil. Power unearned corrodes, and divinity stolen bleeds, madness. To fulfill the final trials, they would need to confront not only the Tribunal, but their own echoes. Not just the gods of Morrowind, but the ghost of Nerevar himself. Memory made flesh in dream and battle. This was not a journey of conquest, but of reckoning. And reckoning drew nearer, echoing through the ash-choked valleys toward Red Mountain's breathless peak. Deep within the choking haze of Red Mountain, beneath the crust of ash and time, a heartbeat where none should. Dagoth Ur had returned. No longer the trusted shield brother of Nerevar, no longer the fallen guardian of the heart. He had become something else, something neither mortal nor divine. Sustained by the Heart of Lorkhan, reshaped by forgotten energies, Dagoth Ur slumbered for centuries, his thoughts reaching out like slow tendrils through the dream. And then he woke. Morrowind changed with him. The air grew heavy. Blight storms, red, thick and unnatural, rolled across the ashlands, warping creatures into twisted mockeries of their former selves. Cliff racers grew maddened. Quama nests turned restless. Whole villages vanished under choking skies. The sleepers came next. Ordinary citizens began murmuring in the streets, caught in half-dreams. They spoke in riddles. They praised the sixth house. Some carved symbols into their homes. Others simply disappeared, drawn toward Red Mountain like moths to smoldering flame. In the shadows, the sixth house, the forgotten lineage of House Dagoth, rose anew. Cults gathered in secret caverns and sealed tombs, building shrines of ash and bone. There they waited, chanting praises to their god who dreamed beneath the mountain. Dreamers, ash vampires, and corporous beasts, the broken children of Dagoth Ur, spread his will across the land. Corporus, the divine disease. A gift, Dagoth Ur claimed, not a curse. It ravaged the body, but preserved the soul. Victims became more than mortal, incorruptible, unaging, loyal beyond death. And yet they suffered, imprisoned within twisted forms, sanity slowly unwinding like thread in the wind. The Tribunal, Sothasil, Almalexia, and Vivek struggled to contain the spread. Their power waned, their connection to the heart strained. Their divine glow flickered as Dagoth Ur's grew stronger. He had not only returned, he was becoming the heart. He sent visions to the Nerevarine. Some were threats, others invitations. "Join me," he whispered through dreams and wind. "Restore what was lost. Let the gods fall, and the world be remade." And so the mountain breathed deeper. Smoke rose in coils. Old machines beneath the ash began to hum again. Red Mountain was not merely a battlefield waiting. It was a wound reopened. And in its depths waited a friend turned god, a god turned nightmare, dreaming of unity in ash and blood. As the Nerevarine pressed deeper into Morrowind's unraveling, the time came to confront those once called gods. The Tribunal. Almalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek, once mortal, now godlike, each having tapped the divine energy of the heart to elevate themselves. For centuries, they had ruled not only as leaders, but as divine figures, walked among their people, shaped their religion, wrote the truths of history. But time erodes even divinity. Dagoth Ur's resurgence revealed the fracture behind their glow. Their powers, once radiant, now flickered like fading stars. The heart, source of their might, no longer pulsed only for them. It answered now to another. Vivek was the first encountered, not as an enemy, but as a poet king, aware of his fading flame. He spoke in riddles, in verses written beneath moons, and in silence. His city still floated, his people still praised, but doubt had crept into his voice. He knew the prophecy, knew that Nerevar had returned and what it meant. He did not resist. Instead, he offered counsel, guidance through riddles, aid through ambiguity. Of all the Tribunal, he alone seemed to accept the twilight of his godhood with something like grace. Sothasil remained hidden, deep within his clockwork city, a domain of gears and logic. A scholar of time and tone, he had long ceased speaking with mortals. When his silence was broken, it was not with words, but through machines and predictive algorithms. Calculations of fate that could not be changed, only endured. Almalexia was different. Queen of Mournhold, goddess of mercy, mother of blades. Proud, radiant, and feared. Her faith in herself had calcified into certainty. She would not kneel to prophecy. She would not fade into history. To her, the Nerevarine's rise was not fate fulfilled. It was rebellion. Their confrontation was inevitable. Steel and fire clashed with divinity and wrath. Almalexia fought not to destroy the Nerevarine, but to erase the idea that she could be replaced. But ideas, once born, cannot be so easily slain. Her fall was not just the end of a goddess, but the end of an age. The Tribunal's divinity, stripped and tattered, now lay bare. Morrowind's people no longer looked up in worship, but around in confusion. The gods who had walked among them were now memories, and the mountains still burned. Dagoth Ur still waited. The final journey lay ahead, not through politics or prophecy, but through blood, stone, and heart fire. The air grew thin as the Nerevarine climbed the ashen slopes. Red Mountain loomed, no longer just a place, but a living presence. It watched, it whispered. Its breath was the wind, hot with the taste of iron and rot. The sky above had turned the color of dried blood, and the earth below rumbled with the memory of ancient war. This was not just the end of a journey. This was the unmaking of a prophecy, or its fulfillment. The ghost fence, the shimmering barrier that once held Dagoth Ur's power at bay, now faltered. Its shimmer dimmed, its runes flickered. The weakened tribunal could no longer maintain its strength. Within, the blight spread freely. Corrupted beasts, ash ghouls, and dreamers swarmed the pathways, drawn toward the power that pulsed beneath the stone. And yet, the Nerevarine pressed on. Ancient strongholds, Kagrenac, Odrosal, Verminal, rose like broken teeth from the mountain's flanks. Each held remnants of the sixth house, and each bore the mark of Dagoth Ur's growing might. Ash vampires, once comrades of House Dagoth, now transformed into godlike horrors, stood sentinel. They were his echoes, his children, fragments of his dream-given flesh. To reach the heart, one had to pass through them. The path was not only physical, it led inward, into memory, into fear, into doubt. Visions plagued the Nerevarine, whispered regrets, ancient betrayals. The memory of Nerevar, the betrayal at Red Mountain, the theft of divinity. Dagoth Ur's voice murmured through dreams and ruin. You are not his reincarnation. You are a puppet in a play long ended. But each step forward was a defiance. Within the citadel of Dagoth Ur, the walls breathed. The stone felt alive, veined with heart fire and soaked in divine resonance. Old Dwemer machines still functioned, long after their creators had vanished, repurposed by Dagoth's will. And finally, the heart, suspended above molten stone, pulsing with power ancient and unknowable. Kagrenac's tools, sunder and keening, once used to tap divinity, now awaited the Nerevarine's hand. The same relics that had unmade the Dwemer, the same tools that had birthed the Tribunal. To strike the heart was to strike at the center of all things, of morrowind, of gods, of memory. Dagoth Ur appeared, not as a monster, but as a man who had forgotten he once was one. A mask of flesh, a voice of certainty, a dreamer who mistook his nightmare for salvation. Together, he said, we can make a new world, a better one. And the Nerevarine answered. The final confrontation echoed like a song, with no chorus, just rising verses of flame, fury, and forgotten memories. Dagoth Ur stood amid the divine machinery, a remnant of what might have been. His body was more myth than mortal now, held together by will and the pulsing beat of the heart. He spoke with the calm of madness, his words a lullaby for the world he wished to remake. In his vision, Tamriel would be reborn under a single will, his. But the Nerevarine had heard enough dreams. The chamber trembled with tonal resonance. Pipes sang, steam hissed like serpents, and the heart throbbed, vast and golden red, like the world's own heartbeat exposed to the air. Kagrenac's tools, sunder in one hand, keening in the other, were no longer dormant. They hummed in recognition, as if they remembered their purpose. To destroy a god, one must wound the dream he believes in. The first strike shook the mountain. The heart pulsed violently, sending waves of energy in all directions. Dagoth Ur screamed, not in pain, but in denial. His form flickered, parts of him turning to ash, others growing grotesquely. He lunged, not as a villain, but as a desperate soul trying to save the only world he knew. The second strike sent shockwaves through the Dwemer mechanism. Steam vents exploded, tonal crystals shattered. Dagoth Ur's mask cracked, revealing eyes not filled with evil, but with the terror of loss, the loss of purpose, the loss of self. The final blow came not from hatred, but from necessity. Keening pierced the heart's surface one last time. A sound like unmaking filled the chamber, a deep harmonic tremor that seemed to unravel existence itself. The heart dimmed, its glow vanished, and with it, Dagoth Ur, his form collapsing like a dream suddenly forgotten upon waking. Silence followed. No triumph, no chorus of angels, just the cooling of ancient machines and the quiet whisper of ash settling onto stone. With the heart's destruction, the source of the tribunal's divinity also vanished. What power they retained would soon fade, as all things mortal must. The ghost fence collapsed. The blight receded, and Red Mountain fell into uneasy slumber. The Nerevarine emerged not as a conquering hero, but as a weary traveler, one who had walked through prophecy and fire and come out the other side with no audience, no applause, only the understanding that some endings are meant to be quiet. In defeating Dagoth Ur, they had not slain evil. They had ended a dream. The world did not rejoice. There were no horns, no banners raised in celebration, no golden light washing across the land. The fall of Dagoth Ur and the destruction of the Heart of Lorkhan was not an event to be witnessed. It was something that happened quietly, in the deepest reaches of the Red Mountain, known only to a few and understood by even fewer. The tribunal felt it first. Almalexia, Sotha-Sil, Vivek, gods no longer. The divine spark that had sustained them for centuries flickered and dimmed. They were not stripped of all power, not at once, but they felt the slow unraveling. The tapestry of their constructed godhood, once tightly woven, began to fray at the edges. In Mournhold, Almalexia grew silent. In Clockwork City, Sotha-Sil withdrew further into his machines, his contemplations now darker, tinged with the uncertainty of a man who had dared to rival the gods and found the gears slipping from his grasp. And in the city of Vivek, the warrior poet floated above the waters and said nothing. The people of Morrowind did not understand what had changed, not immediately. The ghost fence had vanished. The blight storms stopped. The Red Mountain, for the first time in generations, fell into a quiet stupor. The cults of the tribunal whispered of a test, a divine trial. Others saw it as vindication of the dissident priests, who had long warned of false gods and forgotten sins. And in secret, the temple began to fracture. The ordinators, once zealous defenders of faith, now turned inwards, divided between those who still believed and those who feared they had been betrayed. The people of Vardenfell looked to the sky, wondering what came next. When gods fall, who rises? The Nerevarine did not stay to answer. Having fulfilled the prophecy, whatever it had truly meant, they vanished. Some say they traveled east to Akavir. Others claim they returned to Ash, no longer needed now that the world had righted itself. Their story, once destined for legend, faded into rumor. No throne was claimed, no temple raised in their honor. What remained was silence and possibility. In the absence of divine authority, Morrowind stood at a precipice. Its future no longer dictated by gods or heart-powered machines, but by its people. For the first time in centuries, mortals alone would shape the course of events, with all the beauty, brutality, and uncertainty that entailed. In the deep halls of forgotten Dwemer ruins, steam still hissed and gears turned, unchanged by the fall of gods. But above, the sky seemed a little clearer. Long after the Heart of Lorkhan ceased to pulse, its echoes remained, Kagrenac's name, once spoken only in scholarly chambers and whispered by tonal architects, took on a new weight. No longer just the architect of divine ambition, he became the central figure in a story that had defined and nearly unmade Morrowind. What remained of his legacy was not ruin, it was resonance. The tools he left behind, keening and sunder, were no longer active, but their mere existence continued to challenge the nature of reality. Locked away, studied under heavy guard, or lost to time, they were reminders that godhood could be manufactured, that the veil between mortality and divinity, once thought impermeable, had been pierced by clever hands and unyielding will. The Dwemer themselves had vanished, but the world they left behind refused to fall silent. Their machines still hummed, powered by soul gems and mathematical precision. Their guardians still roamed, unaware that their creators were long gone. Their cities, once filled with thought and theory, remained as they had been at the moment of vanishing. Half-eaten meals on stone plates, workshops paused mid-thought, no signs of struggle, only sudden absence. Scholars returned to these places, drawn not just by curiosity, but by the realization that the Dwemer had perhaps understood something no one else had. Their tonal architecture, once dismissed as arcane nonsense, was now seen as the skeleton key to hidden truths. Their disappearance no longer just a historical curiosity, but a warning. What had they seen? Was it godhood, transcendence, or a mistake too great to name? Many believed the Dwemer had zero-summed, faced the raw truth of existence, and blinked out. Others clung to Kagrenac's notes, scrawled in cryptic diagrams and harmonic formulas, as signs that they had ascended to a higher plane, leaving behind only echoes. And the Falmer, their silent, suffering cousins, remained below. Twisted remnants of a failed alliance, they haunted the same ruins, blind and broken. The cost of Dwemer ambition etched into their every movement. The Tribunal had used Kagrenac's tools and tasted godhood. Dagoth Ur had nearly remade the world using his knowledge. And yet Kagrenac himself had vanished with the rest, his ultimate success or failure still unknowable. But the deeper truth lingered like steam in the Dwemer halls. Perhaps the greatest legacy of Kagrenac was not his disappearance. It was the question he left behind. If mortals can create gods, who decides what's divine? And if knowledge itself leads to obliteration, is ignorance the only true salvation? In the stillness that followed the fall of gods and dreamers, Morrowind exhaled. Not with relief, not with triumph, but with a heavy breath of centuries catching up to it. The Red Mountain, once the beating heart of myth and madness, lay quiet. No more blight storms crawled across the land. No corpus beasts stalked the slopes. The ghost fence, its eerie shimmer of trapped souls and divine will, dissolved into sky and silence. But the ash remained. It fell in slow spirals across the land, fine as flour, grey as regret. It coated the remains of Vivek's city. It buried lost shrines and exposed secrets once guarded by faith. Ashlanders, long mocked by temple loyalists, now walked with heads high. Their truths, once heresy, had become history. Among the people, confusion rippled like heat above volcanic stone. The Tribunal temple, weakened and fractured, could no longer offer clarity. Its sermons rang hollow. Its statues, once radiant with divine presence, stood silent, stone once more. A new age had begun, though no one quite knew what it was. In Balmora, shopkeepers opened their stalls beneath skies that no longer glowed red with threat. In Aldrune, warriors of House Redoran stood more somber than ever, their oaths now sworn to a fading past. And in the Velothi Mountains, ancient Daedric ruins stirred, freed from the divine suppression that once blanketed them. The world adjusted, slowly. Scholars whispered of the Nereverine's legacy, of dreams fulfilled and rewritten. Some argued the prophecies were never real, just metaphors. Others insisted they had all come true, and now something greater waited beyond the veil. Even among the dissident priests, victory brought unease. The truth they had fought to expose now lay bare, but what to build in its place? And beneath the soil, the bones of the old world still shifted. Steam continued to hiss from Dwemer vents. Long-abandoned constructs lumbered in forgotten halls, and tonal harmonics hummed faintly behind metal doors that hadn't opened in centuries. The land had changed, but it had not healed. The heart was gone. The gods had fallen. The blight had ended. But Morrowind remained, proud, wounded, burning slowly from within. Its people, scarred and resilient, stood on the edge of something uncertain. Not apocalypse, not utopia, but possibility. And possibility, in a land shaped by ash and ambition, was the most dangerous inheritance of all. In the vast caverns of Tamriel's forgotten places, the silence of the Dwemer persists. Not the silence of decay, nor the stillness of ancient death, but a silence that feels intentional, measured, engineered. Their ruins still hum, pistons still hiss, lamps still glow with colorless light that never flickers. Machines still patrol corridors as though the world had never changed. And yet, there is no one left to command them. No prayers offered to forgotten gods. No voices in the halls, once filled with theoretical debate and mechanical music. The Dwemer, deep folk, dwarves, tonal architects, remain gone. Not dead, not lost in a realm of oblivion, not even sleeping. Gone. In their wake, theories swirl like steam through broken pipes. Some say they achieved their goal, transcendence, that they became more than flesh, pure intention woven into the fabric of reality, a harmonic wave forever vibrating outside time. Others insist they met ruin, that Kagrenac's experiment was a miscalculation, a tonal disaster that unmade them at the frequency of their own genius. And then there are those who believe in zero-summing, that the Dwemer saw the true nature of reality, the dream of the Godhead, and in the face of that revelation, chose silence. Not just absence from the world, but absence from existence itself. Their cities offer no answer. The machines don't speak. Their records, etched in long-dead language, trail off in mid-sentence. Even Yagram Bagan, the lone survivor, offers only fragmented thoughts. The last of his kind, bloated by corpus, lingering in a world that has outlived the questions he once burned to answer. Yet perhaps the silence is the answer. Perhaps the Dwemer, in their final act of creation, chose to become something we cannot comprehend. Not gods, not dead, but something else entirely. And in doing so, they left us not with knowledge, but with curiosity. Not with proof, but with wonder. The heart of Lorkhan no longer pulses. The tools of Kagrenac lie dormant. But the question they left behind still echoes. Who were the Dwemer?
What did they see?
And will we ever be ready to understand it?